Hey everybody, here we have a match in the IS-2. Now this is the IS-2 Berlin, the premium version. It's basically the same as a fully upgraded IS, just with the one-piece armor plate instead of the stepped armor plate, and it seems to handle maybe a little bit better as far as driving goes, but otherwise it's very similar. It has the same playstyle, pretty much the same general feel to it, same gun, everything like that. Platooned up with Primelaw, who is also in an IS-2 Berlin. And of course the white stripe around the turret and the white cross on top of it are identification marks, so that Soviet aircraft would be able to identify their own tanks during the final assault on Berlin. That's why the IS-2 and ISU-122 or SU-122, I can't remember which one it is. That's why they have the stripes on them. All of the Soviet armoured vehicles, the large ones anyway, the tanks and tank destroyers and assault guns involved in the Battle of Berlin had those markings on them, much like Allied aircraft over Normandy, and in fact for much of the duration of the war on the continent, after D-Day, had invasion stripes for identification purposes, although they didn't really need them because the Luftwaffe pretty much didn't do anything by that point. Myself and Primelaw head up to the C3 corner, C2, C3, and run headlong into the enemy IS-3. Primelaw immediately loses about half his health, but we do have some support here, and we do have a corner to work with, so all is not lost. We make sure that we time our pokes to coincide with at least one of the enemy heavies being on reload. Get some pretty lucky pens on that IS-3 there. There's also an IS-2 on the enemy team, of course. And I completely whiff my shot at him. We've now got a T-34 in support of us, which is good because he's got real armor and a big gun. While myself and Primelaw could feasibly handle all this stuff with our own guns, the hit points are the real issue for us. We don't have the hit points, we don't have the armor. The T-34 doesn't have much armor, but it has a very, very strong turret, and it also has a much bigger hit point pool than us. I unfortunately take a hit there. I was hoping to bait the IS-2 into missing me, and the Tiger gets 1 and 2. So now both myself and Primelaw are pretty low on health. I've still got over half, Primelaw's sitting at about half. That may seem like plenty, but you've got to remember we are facing a Ferdinand and several 122mm guns. Finish off the Tiger, but unfortunately not in time to save our Tiger P. The enemy Tiger P who killed him comes up and gets tracked. Primelaw and I are now both up on top of this hill. Primelaw is forced up here as the enemy heavy's pushed around into his face. I decide it's time to switch to APCR because this is where our last stand is going to happen. The enemy Tiger P decides he's had enough of us and actually runs away, which I was surprised by. And now it's a case of trying to scare the Pershing into not pushing me while keeping an eye on what the heavy tanks and the Ferdinand are doing, which is quite stressful, and I was kind of freaking out at this point. Thankfully the IS-3 is slow to aim, and so I get a shot through his side to finish him off before he can take one at me, which would have knocked me down to one-shot range for most of this stuff. Now of course my gun depression means I have to drive all the way out to get decent shots at the Pershing. I do get one in, but take a hit in exchange. Primelaw comes in to try and coax the Pershing into shooting him while I work my way around, and Primelaw blocks his gun. Pershing fires, and I'm able to finish him. Unfortunately for me, I get double tracked by a near miss by Artie, and then the enemy IS-2 finishes me off. Thankfully, Primelaw is still up, and the enemy IS-2 gets absolutely fucked by our 4043, who basically... It wasn't a shotgun, it was a proper arty shot, but it was almost like a shotgun, because that shell came in straight into the back of his engine deck and just stomped him completely. Such is the hazard of showing your back to arty, particularly when you're on a hillside and they are lower down than you. Anyway, with this flank dealt with, Primelaw decides to begin pushing on the enemy base. Our T-28 Proto is sitting in back with the arty. Not a surprise. JP4 is moving along the South Road, and our Super Pershing suicided into the enemy cap with the T-37 and is getting dunked on by the Cromwell B, the Bromwell. Now, of course, the Bromwell does have support from the ARL, but losing a Super Pershing and a T-37 to a one-shottable Bromwell and an unspotted ARL is pretty sad. Bromwell's days are over though, as the 4043 gets in a blind shot and finishes him off, so now Primelaw just has to contend with the ARL, which has not been seen for a while, and whose hit points we do not know. He also has to make sure he doesn't let the enemy Su-14 shotgun him, or spot him for the ARL, which it's doing right now. In fact, the Su-14 doesn't need to shoot his gun at all, as long as he hides in that little depression he's in and pops up every now and then to spot Primelaw. The enemy ARL will be able to put effective fire on Primelaw. And there's only so many shells that these destructible buildings will take before suddenly Primelaw has no cover whatsoever, and he's forced to run over to where the arty can easily shotgun him to try and find some cover there. He's not quite sure who he should be more worried about at the moment, so he's kind of switching his aim back and forth, but the ARL reveals itself, finally. It does get a shot in. Thankfully, he is using the 90mm gun. If he was using the 100mm and that had been anything but a very, very low roll, Primelaw would have been dead. Unfortunately, the good old D25T accuracy comes into effect here, and the ARL lives to fight for a little while longer, but not very much longer, as an M4043 on our team manages to dispatch him with a shell. Good thing he did, because it's probable that the ARL would have actually been able to get a shot into Primelaw very shortly had he not been blown up. So good performance by both our 4043s, and good performance by Primelaw. Now it's just a case of trying to bait the enemy arty out where he can shoot it, although Primelaw was on the cap out mission for heavy tanks, so he was happy to just hide behind a building. Unfortunately for him, our own arty were not so willing to live and let live, and managed to knock it out with some counter battery fire. All in all, pretty decent match. 3,300 damage in a tier 7 heavy tank is nothing to scoff at, and we managed to hold off a lot of tier 8s for much longer than most people would have expected, probably. Certainly much longer than our puppy teammates could have held them off. This tank, while it's not as blatantly superior to its tech tree cousin as the Bromwell is, and it doesn't have the neat little gimmick that Rudy does, it's not a bad tank at all. If you like the IS or the Chinese IS-2, you will like this tank. It's more of the same. And of course, being a premium, you can use it as a crew trainer. I don't actually know, I think it does get a credit bonus. I'm pretty sure it does, because while I was playing it, I was making money hand over fist. So yeah, there you go. Crew trainer, money printer, and just good, solid fun to play. If you're looking for a good Soviet crew training tank, then this isn't bad. May not be as made as some of them, Might not have the KV5's reputation or the IS6's somewhat questionable balance, but it's a good solid tank that you can adapt to quite easily because it plays so much like its tech tree cousins. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as ever, I will see you on the next one.